I'm drawn to those places where games are evolving.
Putting the train tracks down as the train was moving.
There's a revolution coming in platforms and games that empower communities and creators.
Biggest stakeholders in that industry are the players. They're the key stakeholder.
New type of experience for communities.
Take every step at a time.
That is how we then go from that journey of good to truly great.
It's immense fun.
It is the most fun.
Here I am with my man Paul, the CEO and founder of Wildcard.
Co-CEO, yes, together with my wife actually. It's a family business, if you believe that.
Awesome, I love it. Katie's amazing.
Yes.
So tell me a little bit about how you got into this delightful journey that you've been on.
Well, I've been a gamer forever, right? You too, I'm guessing?
Yes.
Since I was a kid, right? And actually there was a moment there where I thought I wanted to make films, which is actually what my wife was doing when I met her, film and TV, but you know, I got into games. I started making my first games at like 13 or 14 years old. I had my first kind of games business. It was actually an online business. Do you remember BBSs back before the internet? Anybody who's like, you have to be really old for
what
this.
What was BBSs?
It's bulletin board systems. It's
like, it's kind of user group
pre-internet. Yes, yeah, pre-internet, like online. Well, actually, my first business, I ran a BBS called the Playing Fields in South Florida, where I'm from. And it turned into South Florida's biggest BBS. And what's so funny, man, so we have a Discord now for our new game, Wildcard. It has 100,000 people on it. And I feel like I'm doing the same thing again. I'm just running a community server. And I was doing that back in, oh my gosh, when was this? 1995, before the internet with the BBS. And I just feel like I'm living that same life again, running a Discord and doing all that kind of stuff. It's amazing.
Wow, amazing. And so that was the beginning of the journey.
That was the beginning of the journey. I then was incredibly blessed to join a little new studio called Ensemble Studios in Dallas, Texas. We were working on a game called Age of Empires, and that's really where I grew up in the industry, because I joined them when I was 19 turning 20, so I was just a baby. I joined that team, and it was the most incredible ride of my life. We obviously shipped Age of Empires, Age 2, Age 3, Age of Mythology.
I think still probably like one of the greatest strategy games ever.
That's my favorite.
Ever made.
Age 2. I know some Age of Mythology people out there now, especially because it's getting remastered. That's my favorite thing, right? The Age franchise is actually more popular today than it ever has been because it was re-released on Steam and people are still playing it. And like, I mean, that's the best feeling, you know, like to know that it's just continuing to bring people happiness. But anyway, I was there for 12 years, 13 years, something like that. So I really grew up with those people who are now my friends. I'm still working with many of them. The core of the Wildcard team is the same group of people that I was working with when I was 19 on Age of Empires. Like the same. We've been working together for like 30 years now, and it's amazing. So anyway, did that for a while, and then the iPhone came out, and I was just enamored with it. I was just like, this is like a Game Boy that my sister is gonna own, that my wife is gonna own. Like, I gotta make games for this. And I started telling everybody around me at the studio, like, this is what we should make games for. And people are just looking at me like I'm crazy. Like, because you just have to, it's hard for people everybody takes for granted now that mobile games are the thing. But back then, we were all like flip phones, right? And we're just transitioning to the iPhone. So people just thought it was the worst idea. Like, why would you want to make games for mobile phones? That's like bowling and solitaire and shit like that. Nobody wants to play those games. But I just was like, this is the coolest thing. This device, this platform, this is gonna, like, I think we can make games that get to reach an even broader audience than what we had done with Age of Empires, and Halo Wars was the other game we worked on. And so we left and we started a little studio called New Toy, and my brother and I and Katie, and worked on a game called Words of Friends, which ended up being like a top 3 mobile all-time game. Like, it has like 500 million players or something. It was insanely popular. And so as crazy as the Age of Empires ride was, that was actually the craziest. We built that, sold it to Zynga.
Did you know what was happening? Like at that time, you obviously got into it because you were thinking, like, I can do something here, and I see an angle that can be really successful, and there's probably a lot of fun in going into that whole journey, and that's an exciting thing. But did you foresee it going to that level where it's 500
way.
Yeah, you're like,
no way.
Okay, yeah.
You know, I don't know, this is probably your experience too. Like, I'm here talking about these new things that we're excited about in Web3 and crypto and this. And when I talk about it, it can sound like I imagine it's going to be the next biggest thing. And maybe it will be. But the fact is, like, if I get too hung up on that, I get really anxious and it just doesn't feel right. So I have to like recenter myself and be like, be demure, be be present. Like, okay, so and the thing that calms me down is I just think, okay, I don't know if I can achieve something of that insane scale, but do I think that I can at least bring to life some new thing that nobody's experienced before that's valuable and is gonna like bring joy to people and actually, if I can even do that for one person, 5 people, 10 people, then like that's great. And so in the case of Words of Friends, I just wanted to recreate the feeling of playing board games together with my family and friends. That was it. We were doing that. Like we would play, my brother and I were playing chess on my desk because he actually worked at Ensemble Studios too. And so he would come by and like make a move and then I'd make a move later. And that was actually the original inspiration for that whole thing with friends was like, let's just do that. You know, I don't know. I don't think I dreamed about making like a word game ever in my career, but it just seemed like a fun thing that would be valuable. And that's kind of how it is now. Like there is a version of what we're working on now that might end up being the next biggest thing, but I have to stay focused on like, you know, is there some new feeling that I can bring to life for people that is valuable? And if so, then that's what success looks like. And I can't think too much about like what happens if it becomes the next Twitter or the next whatever. Like, yeah, we'll see.
Speaking of that, so and by the way, if I jump into anything that's like,
well, I was gonna say like you've worked on things. How do you answer that question? Like if you get caught up and people are telling you like, oh my gosh, that could be the next big thing, like it can feel like a lot of stress, you know?
Yeah, I mean, I think for us, we try to like you put one foot in front of the next.
That's right. I literally just told that to Kate. I was like, just one foot in front of the other.
Do you know what I recently watched like a kind of documentary at Lord of the Rings, and Peter Jackson was describing when he was making it, and he felt like he was putting the train tracks down as the train was moving. Do you know? And it feels always like a little bit like that when you're trying to do something that is. That hasn't been done before, you know? It feels like you don't, you just have to try to take every step at a time and keep going. But it's immense fun though.
It is the most fun.
It's so fun to try something.
I sometimes feel like it's a little bit of a disease. Like I'm addicted to the fun of it. It's like, why am I doing this crazy thing again?
I'm totally addicted to it. I love the idea. I love the idea of like just the minute you figured it out, that you go and do something even more difficult.
And you know, and actually like it's the moment. So like we actually just came out of a meeting with somebody I probably shouldn't mention, but anyway, we got to show them, Katie's like, don't mention it. We got to show them some of the new stuff we're working on. And one of the guys in the meeting was just like this in the meeting. And he's like, I just got chills. Like, that's so amazing. And I was like, that's actually it. Like, I just live for that moment of working on something that somebody else sees something wonderful in it that they want in their life that could make them happy or enrich their lives. That's it, you know, and that's what keeps us going, I think.
Yeah, we also share
feeds the addiction.
we share another similarity in the sense that we also went into VR around that time as well. And I made a piece called Glimpse, which is more on the film kind of like kind of more on the film side to do well. And you made
Lucky Still,
which was like a really pioneering game at the time. It was like, you know, like essentially taken, like, can you make a kind of a platform style game inside of VR? People are like, I don't know, no one's even thought of that. So what was that journey like?
Well, first, I just wanted to say, like, this is one of my favorite things. There's a few people in this industry that I feel like have that same particular disease that I have, or focus, or whatever it is, where I keep finding them on these same frontiers. You know, it's like we run into each other in mobile and free to play, and then later we're like, wait, you're doing a VR thing too? Okay, and now here we are at a crypto. Wait, you're doing a crypto thing too? Like, it's just, I feel like there's something in common between us and other people. It kind of doesn't make sense. Like, wow, how did you go from mobile to VR to Web3? Like, what?
Yeah.
But the thing is, like, I think we are drawn to those places. I am. You can speak for yourself. I'm drawn to those places where games are evolving, where the definition of what a game is and what interactive entertainment is like expanding, and new rules are being written, and it's like this sort of like untested frontier. To the analogy you made perfectly, where there's no train tracks yet. And so trains can't even go there, but if we can build tracks and we can build into that frontier, then maybe it's a place where everybody wants to go. And that's, you know, it is, like you said, it's crazy because I made this joke with Katie, like film and TV are so simple in comparison, because the analogy into games is when Katie was first becoming a game developer and joining this frontier with me, I was like, okay, imagine it's all the complexity of making a film and all the, the cast, the crafts, the costumes, all that kind of stuff. And also you have to invent filmmaking at the same time as you're making the film. That's basically what game development is. And so, yeah, it's crazy as we plant ourselves on these new frontiers. And not only do we have to figure out how to make great games and great products, but we also have to figure out this crazy new technology. And like crypto is, it's probably the hardest of those that I've worked on. Because now, not only do we have some new technology and we have to make great games and great products, we're also in an environment where, like, if you do the wrong thing, it's like against the law, like it's this complicated regulatory environment and everything else, which is fine.
Have to be super careful, and the experimentation
thoughtful.
It has to run through a kind of a different type of gauntlet, doesn't it?
Yeah.
And there is experimentation. I suppose to do the kind of things that we do, you have to have that experimental interest, right?
You have to be willing. To try things that
you've got to be willing. And when I look at Wildcard, that's a game that is really polished, but it is also rich with new ideas. And one of the things that looks most interesting to me as a gamer and as a game developer is some of the kind of genre bending that you guys have been doing there. Like, do you want to speak a little bit on that?
Sure. Yeah. Thank you for noticing that. So Wildcard actually was born, the vision for it was many years ago now, so 6 or 7 years ago. And it came from what we were seeing starting to happen on YouTube and Twitch and these new platforms where people were starting to not just play games for fun, but play games to entertain others. People were tuning in to watch people play games, which like now looking back, it seems obvious, but at the time it felt like this radical new thing to me.
It felt crazy.
Yeah.
Do you remember when it first came out? Everyone was like, hold on, people are watching people playing games.
Yes.
What is the world coming to kind of thing, right?
There was an article in 2014 that I can distinctly remember that was about how somebody had done the analytics and was like, Minecraft is half of all views on YouTube is just Minecraft.
Exactly.
And it's just like this mind-blowing thing. And now we just take it for granted. Well, anyway, when that started happening, I kind of turned to our team and I was like, this feels like another one of these moments, like free to play, like mobile, like VR. Like this is a place where video games are going to evolve again and where we can possibly reach an even broader audience. Because like for me, that's part of my passion is I want to build games that can reach everyone, right? And so in pursuit of that, it's about like finding things that make games more accessible, make them reach a wider. And I was like, there's nothing more accessible than just watching someone else play a game. Like you don't even have to pick up the controller and you're still enjoying a game. So I was like, we have to, and the games that were popular on streaming then, actually a lot of them still are the ones that dominate. Minecraft, League of Legends, Fortnite, like these games, they were all built before this phenomenon was happening. So their teams, their game designers didn't really get to ask the question, like, if we knew that our game was going to be, you might have something where one gamer is being watched by 100,000 people over their shoulder, what would you change about the game as a designer to do that? Well, I wanted to ask that question. So we started working on this game, Wildcard, that is intended to be a game as much fun to watch as it is to play, as much fun to be a spectator and attendee. And so we started to mix genres to make that happen. We wanted it to feel like sports, but we also were playing a lot of Magic the Gathering at the time, so we wanted a little bit of that, like kind of Pokemon card collecting elements. Yeah, so it has that. And then we also wanted to be an action game, where it's like something like League it's really exciting if you're a League player. But as Katie would always say, if you're not a League player and somebody's like, come watch this exciting game of League, you're like, what is even going on? Like, I don't understand what's happening on the screen. Like it's not like accessible. Like if I said, hey, come watch the Super Bowl with me or whatever, that's something everyone can enjoy. And so we just started to mix those things together in a pot. And it's been many years now we've been working on this because it is a hybrid of different genres. Wildcard is an action game. It's a MOBA. It's a collectible game. It's
kind of sports you mentioned as well.
Exactly. And it has that feeling of live sports when you play it.
I kind of got almost like there was kind of like, initially when I was looking at it, I was kind of like, kind of Rocket League-y,
Yes.
and then it kind of went in. I was like, oh, now it's like Super Smash Brothers a bit or something.
Yeah.
And then there's this kind of like, and then I was like, oh my God, there's card collecting down there.
And you know,
like kind of Hearthstone aspects being put into it.
I don't know what we were thinking when we're like, let's just mash like 3 different genres together.
It feels cohesive.
It does now. Yeah. But it has taken years to find the fun of that, right? It actually reminds me of when we were very first working on RTSs, and that was a new genre. We were coming off games like Civilization that were turn-based, and we were like, what if this could be real time and you could be controlling the units in real time? And it took us a while to find that formula and make it work. And it was the same thing here, like mixing these different elements. I'm very happy and proud to say that now, and I'm not saying this, I mean, I hear other people who put their hands on Wildcard and they tell me, oh, you guys have a really fun game, like I can't wait. So that's really good, but it took us a long time. You know, in our industry, we have that phrase, I'm sure you've used it with your team all the time, finding the fun. And it took us a long time, years, to find the fun of this game because it isn't just a clone of something else, and we had to really invent. But we're there at that point, and now we have to take the last step, which is actually the hardest. Every Age of Empires game was like this too, where you have a game that's good, but it's not so good that you're willing to turn off your other favorite games to play that one. And I can always tell because it's what our developers do in their free time. Right, and the same thing happened from Age of Empires 1 to 2. That's the time I most remember it, because we had obviously shipped Age of Empires 1, and then the whole world loved it, and so we're there working on Age 2, and we're supposed to ship it like I forget the year, and we weren't sure that it was ready yet, and I remember we had this meeting where we were like, let's just be honest, guys. When we're done for the day working on Age 2, what are we playing? We're going back and playing Age 1, and we're having more fun with that than the own game we're working on. So it's not ready to ship yet. And that ended up being a year from when we actually did ship it. Because we just kind of was like, if it's not the game that we're choosing to play, then it's not that great yet. And that's kind of actually, Wildcard is at that moment where I can feel, just like I did for Age 2, like it can be that great. But now the step we have to take with our community, with our play testers, with our pro gamers that are starting to join our team and help give us feedback, that is how we then go from that journey of good to truly great. And I think it's going to happen over the next several months. And like I can feel, I can taste it. It's the coolest feeling. But we still have our work cut out for us. So.
You've been also, you've added this interesting level of focus to how you approach community. So if we move on to kind of some of the kind of crypto aspects or Web3 aspects of some of the stuff that we do, or specifically you do, you've kind of been out there. You're extremely articulate. You've done a lot of really cool things inside of games. I always love sharing panels with you because there's always
likewise, man.
There's always some interesting insight in there. So. But you're really engaging, and you're out there speaking to different people. We've got like a Wolves t-shirt on at the moment.
That's right.
You know, yeah.
My favorite community in Web3.
Yeah. We got Peyton, the founder of the Wolves, down in the room as well with us here. What's been your approach to that? Like, how have you kind of like, you know, your approach on these different things? You've looked for these pioneering aspects. How did you look to kind of integrate into that?
So as I turned to the team and said, look, we want to make a game that is as much fun to watch as it is to play. What I realized is that I was actually bringing together the thing that personally has been my own pursuit since I very first started. I was telling you this story before the interview started. My first business was I was running a bulletin board system for the really old people watching. That's like pre-internet. It's kind of like what Discord is today, but imagine that before the internet. We're all dialing up with our computers, and people know about things like CompuServe and AOL back then. BBSs were kind of like the local version of that. So you would call your computer into somebody else's computer and you'd all get together and you'd chat and play games. Anyway, I ran my first business as a 17-year-old, a BBS called The Playing Fields in South Florida. And I so loved not just playing games and building games, but creating communities. And so on top of all the stuff that Wildcard is as a game, I have poured my own heart into it, and Katie as well, because she's so passionate about this, for it to be a new type of experience for communities. The thing is, the other side of the coin of what we were talking about, like these platforms like Twitch and YouTube, is that they're there to make creators successful if they work well. And actually, they don't work very well right now. The story that we hear all the time from people who just do it because they love it. They play games, they entertain audiences, they run streams. It's hard living, you know, like they're grinding it out. A lot of them have to have full-time or part-time jobs just to support that as their hobby. And then on the flip side of that, we as game developers benefit immensely from their passion, from the energy they pour into this. Like there's this thing that happens, this little game we were working on called Creativerse, and there was this guy that streamed, is a German guy, I won't name him, but anyway, he did a stream of Creativerse over a weekend. And we ended up making like $400,000 that weekend because of his just Let's Play series, right? We didn't even know what's happening or whatever. And I got in contact with him and I was like, that was amazing, man. Like, thank you. You know, I'm glad you loved our game. And I was really curious because this was, for me, it was very early on in understanding Twitch and YouTube, so many years ago. And I was like, how'd you do? Like, you know, like obviously there's ads and stuff. So like you have fans and subscriptions. Like, he's like, oh yeah, it's pretty good. I made a couple $100. And I'm like, oh. And I was like, you know, you drove immense success to our game just in a weekend, and just by doing this thing you love. And those things really clicked together for me. And I was like, okay, our job and our goal with this game is not just to create a really fun game, but also create a platform where creators can be more successful and communities can be more successful. So we are trying to do that now with Wildcard as well.
I love that, man. It's something. It's one of the reasons that I actually got into this whole industry. This part of the industry, anyway, was we watched the growth of video games. So it became this just massive industry, far bigger than anyone expected. Like even like since 10 years ago, right?
Yeah.
And the biggest stakeholders in that industry are the players, right? Yeah. They're the key stakeholder. And sometimes they don't get the rub of the green, so to speak.
Sometimes, most of the time.
Yeah, exactly. And I think actually one of the really most interesting thing about, like, as we try to build the next generation of virtual worlds, is to try to build structures where those key stakeholders, and that kind of includes the people who are like the meta gamers, like the streamers as well.
I love that word for them, meta gamers.
Yeah, like that kind of the surrounding industries, like trying to find ways to reward people for the amazing additions that they get to give us the opportunity to do the stuff that we want to do.
It.
Right?
That's exactly it. I want people to understand when I describe this, when we talk about this, it can sound like we're being altruistic. And yes, I absolutely want those people to be successful. But the thing to understand is that's also tied directly to our success. If I make a streamer more successful with a game that I'm working on, and that game allows that streamer to make a lot more money, and therefore they stream the game more, then obviously I benefit too. So it's this virtuous cycle that I can't believe our industry hasn't tapped more into. There's this really untapped into, unharnessed power of creators and communities in games that is just getting the surface scratched with platforms like Discord and Twitch. And I think that there's a revolution coming in platforms and games that empower communities and creators, that those everyone else, once they see it happening, they're going to have to bring their games to that frontier as well. And that's what I'm most excited about these days.
And speaking of revolutions, I'm mad about AI. I'm mad about
everybody is these days, so it's okay.
I'm mad about the impact that it can do in terms of like the creative process of making games, of course, and like lowering barriers of entry and budgets and stuff like that, and unlocking different types of creativity, but also what it can mean for players as well, in particular for me, like being able to discuss, like, you know, and connect with NPCs inside of video games.
Oh yeah,
is like,
I know.
That is just that is just so like.
Have you seen there's some plugins to Skyrim? I'm all about modding Skyrim that add AI and let you like have these real conversations. It's kind of weird actually, but amazing.
Yeah. It's still early days. It's getting there. We're building a character engine kind of like that enables that. But yeah, what's your take on it?
I also think it's going to be equally important and disruptive in all the best ways to games. I think there's some really cringy takes on AI that like, you know, I think people legitimately give a hard time to some of the companies out there, even recently, who just like really try to make it more like AI is going to make their bottom line better because they're going to be able to pay artists less or something like that. Like so there's a dark side to that I don't agree with. And the example I try to use, so I have a daughter and she's an artist. She's 16. And I'm like, and she gets kind of scared of that stuff, you know, like, is AI going to mean that I shouldn't even try to be an artist? I'm like, no. Look at when photography was invented. If you were an artist and you saw somebody take a picture, I could imagine just being like, screw it all. Like, why am I even doing this? But if anything, art thrived since then, and art is more valuable than ever. So I don't take that negative view. I think that actually AI is going to be another tool in the hands of creators, in the hands of communities. That's what I'm most excited about. From our perspective, like I think that the communities have this really tough job all the time of like moderation and curation and like trying to sort of help their communities behave well. And I think AI can be a great tool for that. So I think it can be a power for evil, but I'm much more excited about it being a power for good. And I am equally mad about it, like you said.
Nice. Last question: What's the next big step for you guys? I know you've touched on some of it.
So we are here showing a thing that I probably can't even put a name on, but it is. So while we've been building Wildcard, we have seen that the platforms that we would like to bring Wildcard to, the things I mentioned like Twitch and Discord, give us some of the features, but really don't give us what we need to create an environment where Wildcard itself can shine, but also where communities and creators who are coming into Wildcard can be successful, can share in the success that they're driving. Simple features like the ability to say, if you're a content creator and you're streaming a game, what if you could have some of the revenue that comes from, or share in the success that comes from other people who saw you play that game and then go on to play the game themselves and go on to buy things in the game themselves. It's just simple things like that, but also these great features that like I want to bring the viewers into the game. So Wildcard's in an arena, like you said, kind of like Rocket League, and there's a really cool feature where the people who are tuning in show up in the stands of the arena and they can like cheer and do all these other things. Anyway, we have had to build our own platform for that for Wildcard, and for the first time here at this show, we're showing people that platform, and I was kind of thinking like the focus of the show would still be about Wildcard for us, but everybody just wants to talk about this new platform. They're like, and I love it. It's for us, it's kind of like our Steam, right? Like when Steam first came out, really Valve was just building it because they needed it for Counter-Strike, they needed it for Half-Life, and it ended up being a tool that every game developer wanted to use. And I think we're building something like that, and we showed it here for the first time, and people are really excited about it. So to me, that's I can't wait. It's only going to be in the next month or two. We're going to start talking about this publicly, and I can't wait.
Okay. Nice, man. Amazing. Listen, Paul, pleasure.
My pleasure.
Yeah, really, really good fun, and I wish you well, sir.
Thanks for joining me here. Thank you. You
Nice
too.
one.